we all just make assumptions sometimes. It's like, oh, we'll just write these articles, we'll put them here, and that'll be great. They might like some video. They might like an e-learning course. They might like to talk to each other about it. They might like an SMS from you. Who knows?
People have stopped asking.
Yeah.
It's funny because whenever I'm talking to customer success managers or leaders, I always ask them, do you know whether your customers are really successful? And most of them, they don't know.
And once again, welcome to the Digital Customer Success Podcast with me, Alex Turkovich. So glad you could join us here today and every week as I seek out and interview leaders and practitioners who are innovating and building great scaled CS programs. My goal is to share what I've learned and to bring you along with me for the ride so that you get the insights that you need to build and evolve your own digital CS program. If you'd like more info, want to get in touch or sign up for the latest updates, go to digitalcustomersuccess.com. And if you have a question or commentary to be used in an upcoming episode, call us and leave a message at 512-222-7381. For now, let's get started. Welcome back to the Digital Customer Success Podcast. It's great to have you back. It is episode 26, and today we feature none other than Markus Rentsch, who is very prolific in the world of CS. Tons of LinkedIn content, tons of great content on his newsletter and his site. He's a CS practitioner and leader and thought leader, and spends a lot of time thinking about CS, which is something that we get into in this conversation, along with tool talk. We talk a lot about ChatGPT and customer value-led growth instead of product-led growth. Just a ton of really amazing insights in this conversation. Also, fun fact, he and I are both German speakers. We're both Austrian natives, so you'll hear a sprinkling of German in there, but we tried to keep it English most of the time. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this conversation with Markus Rentsch. I sure did. Vielleicht, ja, jetzt auf. Okay, this is going to be hard for me because I have to switch mentally between German and English, and the switch always takes a couple seconds for my brain. But Markus, I want to welcome you to the Digital Customer Success Podcast. It's a pleasure having you on because you are a very present and active member of the CS community. You are a mentor. I liked the contributions that I saw in the CS Insider report that you were called out in this last time. You must have crazy amounts of energy because you have two companies, if I'm not mistaken. It's Remark-Able and Sacelerate. But your energy must be endless. So welcome to the podcast, and it's a pleasure having you on.
Thanks for the invitation, Alex.
Yeah,
happy to be.
No problem. So I guess let's start a little bit with your journey into where you are today, because obviously there's some interesting backstory. You're an Austrian native. I take it from your from the beautiful way that you speak German, which is the correct way of speaking German.
True.
What was your I guess early life and education like, and what led you into where you are today in terms of the companies that you're leading?
Yeah, you could best describe it as I entered the customer success space by accident.
We all did,
so
didn't we?
A little bit of backstory. I'm running a consultancy for over 6 years, but for the first 3.5 years, I spent it with a different scope of services. And so I helped SaaS companies building their positioning until one fine day, one of my customers asked me, and how can we make sure that customers get what we're promising? That's been my clue, and I hit Google. So back in the days, you hit Google and not ChatGPT,
yep.
And searched for something. And surprisingly, I found something called customer success. And that's been how I entered the customer success space. I really dug into the matter and learned everything I could in as fast as possible, and started writing about it. Pivoted my whole services, the whole services of my consultancy, and here I am in the customer success space.
Are you like? I think you're like me in this regard, where you set your eyes on something and then you don't sleep or eat until you know. Like, are you a researcher like I am? Like, I just go extremely deep on something and I can't do anything else for a while. Is that you?
Yeah, something like that. So when I first, you could best say it's been a love at first sight.
Mm.
So when I discovered customer success, I knew, okay, that's my calling. That's something I really love, and that's the thing I want to get into, and the thing I want to do in the future.
That's great. It's a luxury that not a lot of people have. But I do think that a lot of CS professionals share that in that it was they kind of found it and stumbled upon it. I'm that way too. And now it's like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. Do you you were talking about Google and ChatGPT. Are you an avid GPT user?
Actually, I'm not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm using it sometimes for some research, but I'm definitely not using it for writing content.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's latest hype, of course, that especially on LinkedIn, people letting ChatGPT or one of these other, I don't know how many tools there exist, write their content, but I really don't like it.
I don't trust it yet. I mean, I trust it for research,
Yeah, I use it to give me some starting points.
Mm-hmm.
So I also wouldn't recommend to use it for learning customer success.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing is, the content ChatGPT uses is usually the one you find on some kind of blog posts and stuff like this. And most of the time, they're really low quality. So basically, ChatGPT is summarizing all the content I would not recommend. So it's definitely not borrowing the content from the best in class of customer success.
No, it's not. It's not. Yeah, I use it quite a bit in researching of ideas and to open up my brain a little bit. And I think that's a very common thing these days is kind of generating those prompts really to get your brain thinking about something in a different way. Yeah, so that's interesting. This is the Digital Customer Success Podcast, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a little bit more about just your opinions around digital CS and where it's going and where it's been. But to start off with, I like to ask all of my guests what their elevator pitch or quick definition of digital CS is, and I'd love for you to chime in on what your take on it is, because everybody's a little bit different here.
Yes, so in most simple terms, I would describe digital customer success as using technology to support the human part of customer success.
I like that a whole lot, and the way that you put that, because that's not the way that a lot of people immediately describe it. A lot of people immediately describe the tools and the using digital outreach to help customers and things like that. But I think the broader scope is helping humans to improve, and whether that's the customer or whether that's the CSM or whether that's the leader, building efficiencies into your process and all of that. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah, I see some companies really also becoming too dependent on technology actually, and really often forget about doing the basics.
Yeah.
The idea of digital customer success for me is not to replace the customer success manager, but to support the customer success manager, to take really away the low value and repeatable tasks so that customer success managers can really focus on the personalized and high value services they provide to customers.
You're paying your customer success managers to have valuable conversations with your customers, not to put together pivot tables and, pull telemetry data out of some JSON, whatever. Yeah, that's great. One of the things you talk about at Remark-Able, because I did do a little bit of research prior to our conversation, is, and something that I really like, is your approach to building customer value-led growth, which we talk a lot about product-led growth and things like that, but customer value-led growth is a very interesting topic, and I'd love for you to go a little bit deeper on that and kind of the stages that you lay out to build a healthy strategy around customer value-led growth.
Yeah, so as I've mentioned, a PLG is a thing today, and it's also gets a lot of hype, but I think it's simply not enough. I mean, the basic idea of creating a product that people can use and get value from it all on their own is great, but it doesn't work for all products.
Correct.
It only works for products like the one we are using now, Zoom, that you can really simply use by common sense. Let's call it like this.
Yeah, or Gmail or any of those things that, you know, you don't need CSMs for.
Exactly. But if you are using some marketing or sales tool or a product management tool, it all depends on the quality of your inputs. So and if you don't have that knowledge and skills and you are putting bad things into the product, you will get bad things out of it. So from the company, from the vendor's perspective, you need to make sure that you are training and educating your customers so that they create that high value or high quality inputs for the product. So in simple terms, if you are using a sales tool, but you have not defined who is the ideal customer to reach out, you won't create much results.
Right.
But of course, you could, as a vendor, you could rely and say, okay, that's something customers need to bring on their own when they're using a product, but I don't think it's the right approach.
Yeah.
Is what the name implies. It means that a company changes a different approach and focuses on delivering customer value. Because when they deliver value to customers, these customers will deliver value to the company. And then the company is growing. So in the most simple terms, it's about customer renewals. So the lifeblood of a SaaS company itself. But it's more because you also want to grow your customers. You want to create referrals from customers. You may want to increase your prices. And all these things only happen if customers get enough value from a product. And that's something that is missing today in most SaaS companies. So they are really not focused on delivering customer value first, but they are really self-centric.
Yeah.
So they care about how fast they are growing. And they don't realize that if they would focus on customers instead, they would no longer have to worry about it.
Yeah, the growth would come naturally.
And the weird thing is that this is true for every great company in the world. If you're looking at companies like Apple, so the most valuable brand on earth, why are they so valuable? It's not because they have such great technology. Maybe it's a bit better than the competitors, but what they care about is the experience. So they really deliver value to customers, or at least customers feel like they get value from buying the product and using the product. And that's what makes it the most valuable brand in the world.
Yep.
So I read a research paper some time ago that Apple sells about 20% or has 20% of the cell phone market, but they're making 80% of the profits.
Yeah.
If you see it live, that there are people really waiting outside a store for hours in line only to buy a new iPhone for an incredibly high price.
That's only slightly different than the last one. The interesting thing is when I think about Apple products, and let's just talk about the iPhone for a second, it is at its very nature a very simple device to use, which is why, you know, you have elderly people that can use an iPhone. You have very young people, like very, very young people that can use an iPhone. But then there's the hidden kind of back-end features that you go, you know, on blogs, you know, you go visit blogs and videos to see, okay, what else can I do with this device and what, you know, what lies behind, because there's so many like hidden Easter eggy kind of features that Apple puts in to satiate the people that really want a technical device. Whereas I feel like, you know, on the other end of the spectrum, Android inherently isn't as easy to use. It takes a level of sophistication as a technology user to use it. they're a lot cheaper, a lot more accessible. But then there's not that polish and not that kind of, that simplicity involved.
Yeah, and it doesn't then have the brand power behind.
Mm-hmm.
And the point is the same principles also apply for B2B. So customers buy products or services because they want to achieve some outcome, whatever it may be. And if you focus on helping customers to get there, that's how you win, especially during these days. So as companies, or most companies, no longer sit on the high amounts of venture capital and start to look at the costs for maybe the first time, they're going to consolidate their tech stack.
Mm-hmm.
So there are companies that are using dozens or even hundreds of different apps, but they can no longer afford to pay for all of these tools just for convenience.
Right.
So CFOs are really turning things upside down and then stop paying for everything that doesn't deliver enough ROI.
Yeah.
And you as a company need to make sure that you are viewed as an essential tool for them.
One of the first steps in your kind of approach to building customer value-led growth is really focusing in on the data. And I think that is incredibly important because there are so many times, especially when cash wasn't as tight as it is in today's environment, where you had a business problem, and a lot of times the knee-jerk reaction is, okay, let's just throw a tool at it. Let's just buy a customer success platform, or let's invest more in Salesforce, or let's get this and let's get that, let's get an LMS and all those kind of things. When in reality, the state of your customer data and the state of all of your data probably can't support that kind of implementation, right? And 9 times out of 10, I mean, you see this a lot where you have this awesome platform, but you're not getting the value out of it because you've fed it a bunch of ratty data. So I'd love your kind of opinion on that a little bit, and maybe some of the largest and kind of typical data gaps that you see within your customers.
Yeah, I think that data gaps result from the same problem that hits most SaaS companies and customer success team, and that's they are really focused on themselves. So they are really focused on customer success from an inside-out point of view. So they never really put themselves into the customer's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So they are sitting on piles of data, but they have very little insights. So they have data like how often are customers using the product, what is the net promoter score, what is the health score. But what they don't have is any context. So they don't understand the why behind what's going on. And if you don't understand the why, you can't make really any informed decisions. Mm-hmm. And you can't be customer-centric. So if you don't know your customer-specific needs, but you rely on guessing and assuming, how can you make your customer successful? So if you don't understand what kind of education and training and consulting they need to solve their problems, you will set up yourself for failure. Mm-hmm. If you don't know who are your best customers and who are your worst customers, you can't really focus on acquiring the customers that are really available for a business.
Yeah,
it's also what I often see. So marketing and sales teams, they work with assumptions about who is the ideal customer for the business. And it's never data verified. You need to pull all your data together and create what I like to call a 360-degree customer view. To really understand the customer story and the customer journey, to understand, okay, what's going on and why does it happen? So one thing most companies really don't know is why their customers actually churn. So because they ask customers and they're telling them, okay, we leave because the product is too expensive. But that's obviously not the truth. Mm-hmm. Because if the product was too expensive, why did customers buy it in the first place?
Right.
It doesn't make sense.
They didn't
so
get
what
the value.
They're really saying is that they feel like they're paying too much for the value they get. Mm-hmm. But you don't have a pricing problem, but you have a value delivery problem. Something completely different. So your goal must be to find out, okay, why did customers fail to achieve value? Does the product suck in some ways?
Yeah.
Is this even the right customer? Did we provide them with the right services? That's something everybody needs to understand. And to me, customer value-led growth is a holistic approach. Mm-hmm. So it includes all teams in the company, and everybody needs to understand, okay, who are our customers? what's their behavior, what are the actions they take. So everybody has the same level of information to make the right decisions. Whether you are in marketing and want to put out great content, or you are the product team and want to improve your product roadmap, you are in sales, you are in support, you're in customer success, doesn't matter. Everybody needs to understand the customer on a really deep level.
Yeah. And the the problems that lie in the customer in multiple customers. I mean, there's I love what you're saying about polling your exiting customers. And a lot of us kind of we track churn reason. 9 times out of 10 that may not be the right reason, as you pointed out, because it's somebody just filling in a field or something like that. But actually having conversations with customers that have decided to move on is a pretty valuable activity if you can engage the customer the right way, because it does show that, well, first off, it's a good collection of inputs, right, as to things that you might want to go fix. And if it's happening at multiple customers, then that's really something you need to look at and go fix. But also, I feel like those exit conversations can sometimes leave a mark where the customer goes off and tries something else and it doesn't really work, but they remember that conversation they had with you where you were like really trying to understand, what the core of the issue was. I think there's a lot of value, like trailing value, to be had in that kind of activity.
Yeah, customer conversations are gold. I'm really not a huge fan of that practice that companies are using service for everything. So to really have conversations where I can ask open questions and follow-up questions to really, especially when it comes to churn, to really get at the bottom of things, to really understand the root cause of churn and not only the symptom.
Like a 5 whys.
Exactly. That's a tool I always recommend, because it's really simple and it usually leads to where I need to go.
Yeah, exactly. Why? Just tell me. I would imagine you've worked with a fair amount of customers who maybe they have a really strong CSM function. They have one-on-one CSM motions and QBRs and those kinds of things in place. But especially now, we see a lot of companies kind of doubling down on this notion of digital CS and automations and those kinds of things. And I know that when people ask me, well, where should I start? It's like, well, what do you have? Like, what data do you have, and what are you capable of doing now, versus just waiting until you have a fully baked system or strategy in place? What would your advice though be to customers who want to get started with a digital CS motion?
Yes, as I've mentioned, it's really important to have the data ready, or in the right data and in the right quality. And you need to understand really what your customers are, really the customer journey.
Yeah.
So what I often see is that companies are what I like to call scaling prematurely. So they are automating things without having a definitive proof of these things working out. And that's when they are really pushed back into the kind of reactive position many customer success managers find themselves into. So basically, they are in the end, they are spending often more time fixing things than they are really saving from automating the things before.
Yeah. There are so many times where a customer says, hey, let's just automate something. And I'll be like, wait a second, have you done this before, like with an actual person? Like, have somebody done the thing that you want to automate? Because chances are they're going to learn something about how that doesn't work.
Exactly. That's always what I say. You need to have a working process that actually produces the intended results accurately and repeatedly.
Yeah.
And if it works and you can deliver the components of that process with some kind of tool, then it's a great thing to automate it, because it doesn't make sense to do it manually any longer.
Absolutely.
But if you're doing some kind of customer onboarding without understanding what customers actually need for their onboarding and the steps they need to take, then you're doomed to failure.
Mm-hmm. Automation is a lovely thing until it isn't. And, there's also times where you build some stuff and then it runs in the background, then you forget about it, and you start building other things. And before you know it, you've got kind of competing things that are stepping on each other. And, you said something earlier that resonated with me, which is, you know, uh, you don't like, you need to put yourself in the customer's shoes. A lot of times we forget to do that. A lot of times we forget to subject ourselves to what our customers are getting from us, whether it be emails or phone calls or, whatever it is. Because it can get pretty, the more you start building these things, it can start getting pretty complex.
Yeah, so my favorite approach is simply to put customers front and center,
Yeah.
and then reverse engineer everything you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So basically asking the question, what do I have to do to take the customer there? So let's say your customer wants to, I don't know, increase their revenue by 25%. You need to think about what are the steps to take your customers need to take to get there, and what they require from you, or the training materials or the courses or the guides, whatever you're offering.
Yeah.
And that's, as I've mentioned, we are often losing the focus today. And what I see is that there's so many customer success teams that are really focused on the tech stack and their internal processes, and they're often not compatible with the customers.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some kind of gap between the customer's success journey and how the company thinks the customer success journey looks like.
Yes. It can be two completely different things.
Customer success requires some kind of hard reset. Really get back to its roots and really focus on the customer and put yourself in the customer's shoes at least every month or something, where you ask yourself, okay, does that really help our customers in the best way possible?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, you need to change something.
I think that's the value of voice of the customer committees, is not just, listening to customer feedback and whatnot, but also, putting themselves in the shoes of the customer. Do you, just shifting gears here a little bit, I know, you're EMEA based, you're in Austria, and, right now I work for, a company that has a very large EMEA presence as well. And, I feel like the customer success kind of motion and customer success teams is picking up a lot more steam in EMEA, whereas I think even a few years ago it wasn't as, as I guess popular or as implemented as it is in the United States or in North America. What is your take on the difference between kind of CS in EMEA versus CS in Americas?
I think we in Europe have the problem that we are always, you could say, 2 years behind North America. That's my experience. So while companies in North America really often have a strong customer success function established, here we are often, we have to really focus on even spreading the word about what is customer success and why do you need it. So especially if I'm looking at the DACH market, so it's pretty much underdeveloped. So if you're looking at Europe, the UK, the Netherlands, and the Nordics, so there are 5-6 countries that are really the leaders here. But most companies are really most tech companies, at least, are really behind.
And why is that? Is that a generational thing? Is that leaders kind of set in their ways? Is it just word of mouth, or is it what's behind that in your opinion?
To me, it looks like innovation moves from west to east, globally speaking.
Yeah, interesting.
And it takes time until it crosses the Atlantic. It looks
Yeah.
to me,
Yeah.
at least it looks like this.
Yeah. It's
So
interesting.
I don't feel we are really that innovation friendly in Europe. So there is more politics. You of course have some insights into the matter, of course, too.
Yeah.
And in the especially in the DACH region, we are not really focused on innovation. And here in Austria, it's the scene is really small. So I have almost 35K followers and connections on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
And I think there are maybe 20 people who are customer success managers in Austria.
Wow.
And I can't even say that in Germany there would be so many more, at least not in the way we would expect it, because Germany is, of course, is the economic powerhouse in Europe. But in terms of the digital space,
Hmm.
it's lagging behind as well.
Interesting. That I would imagine for you though that probably looks like a massive opportunity, especially as more and more companies start to adopt CS and need a helping hand because maybe they don't have the luxury of all the meetups and all the all the local groups that exist and whatnot. Like for instance, last was it Friday? I forget when it was. We had a CS Ops meetup in Austin, and it was awesome because it was just like 8 or so CS Ops people, and in a restaurant sharing stories and solving each other's Gainsight problems and doing all that kind of stuff. But I would imagine for you, as and your consulting firm, that probably presents a great opportunity to do that education and that outreach, right?
Yes and no. Of course, it's a great opportunity, but it's also kind of frustrating to see that we are really lagging behind. So it's kind of doing more of all that kind of missionary work.
Yeah.
So it's not the execution we can focus on. So it's really on discussing: do I need it? When do I need it? Does it make sense? And how can we get started?
I think we should
But
start a social meetup group for CS, like the Austrian Österreichische Customer Success Vereinigung or something like that.
one initiative I've started is to create a community. I mean, it's an international community, but most members are from Europe,
Hmm.
to really pull our forces together and really create some kind of movement outside of North America
Mm.
about customer success. It also has events and meetings, and there are also a few local communities that exist. In Amsterdam, Netherlands, there is one, and I think in Paris, and in Berlin as well.
Yeah. And then of
But
course I think you have Gainsight doing a few like pulses in Amsterdam that's coming up pretty soon.
there are
So
some
there's
initiatives, but they are really these are local initiatives, you could say.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
But
Where
I want
where is
to
your community? Is that a Slack community or is that a
yes, it rests in Slack now.
yeah, okay.
But I'm also building out a newsletter. I mean, I already have a newsletter, and I also want to reach a broader audience. I'm on LinkedIn, of course, and I really want to create some kind of movement um, to get more people from Europe together, also from the whole world, of course. So
Sure.
everybody is
Yeah.
welcome. And what's more important than where people are from is I want to create awareness about thinking differently about
Yeah.
customer success.
Hmm.
To really get rid of that old point of view where you really focused on customer success from the vendor's point of view, to really start being customer centric again.
Hmm.
To really get customer success back to the roots
Yeah.
and really focus on delivering customer value. Because I also see that many customer success managers really struggle with it. Up to 2 years ago, the world has been completely different than it is now. So when everybody sat on piles of cash, they didn't care about getting a lot of value from these products. But now the whole thing has changed. So now customer success managers are facing higher customer expectations. Their teams often suffered from layoffs. Even whole teams got disbanded in the past. And they don't have the training and the skills and knowledge required to really proactively help customers to achieve their desired outcomes. So there's basically a real gap between the old way and the new way. And there has not been let's say a smooth transition. So it's basically the old world ended yesterday and the new world started today.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have to adapt or die.
Yeah, all of a sudden we got rid of all the petrol engines and now it's all electric cars.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I think that's perhaps where a lot of the opportunity lies. And I know a lot of people are adopting, a lot more digital programs into their ecosystem, mainly because you want to build out that kind of telemetry set and those motions that help you to kind of implement an early warning system, but also let humans interact with your customer at when they need it. And you don't really know that, especially with a large customer base, unless you have the tooling and the telemetry and the scoring and the alerting that's needed to really do that at scale and with a smaller team. So it's about making them more effective, right?
Exactly.
Well, look, as we kind of start to wrap things up, I do want to ask you, maybe some examples that you've seen recently of, whether it be generative AI or like digital motions that you've seen implemented that or we all see those things as customers as well. Like we sign up for a tool and there's some cool thing that happens and you're like, oh, cool. Are there some examples of that recently that you've noticed that have kind of stuck out and you really liked?
I have to admit I'm really reluctant in terms of all these AI kind of tools that I'm facing everywhere. Because I think these tools are really overhyped and create the false impression that really AI can replace humans.
Sure.
And one reason why I specifically don't like to use an AI tool for my writing is because not only because it sounds like a machine wrote it, but also because I think it's making me more stupid.
Yeah.
So it
Interesting.
really causes my creative thinking and strategic thinking to deteriorate.
Yeah.
So that's why I really use it for doing some kind of research.
It's funny. I'm old and I have a piece of paper and a pen at my desk like all the time. And there's great note-taking apps. I use Notepad and all that. Or whatever I use, whatever it is, whatever comes with the Mac that lets me take notes. I use that quite a bit. But at the end of the day, I find that just writing something down helps me not just to remember it later, but to commit it to memory. Like there's something about the act of physically writing something down. And I know, that probably dates me, puts me into a certain generation, whatever you want to call that. But there's something about that. I think that, I think there's a fine line between your kind of your personal benefit from generative AI and tools like that, and then also just your own need to internalize information. Like for instance, I like writing things down because it helps me remember, it helps me internalize things. But at the same time, using a tool like Update AI, for instance, where it listens to the meeting, it generates some notes, it generates some relatively useful content that you can then use later. I think that's where it gets into efficiency, where I don't necessarily need to commit something to memory or want to have it on my desk on a piece of paper, but it's in a tool where I can grab it later. I can copy and paste it and put it into an email and make it prettier. There's a fine line between the two, I think.
Yeah, I think that the biggest problem is to really distinguish between tools where it makes sense to use them.
Yeah.
where I can really help you, and tools that are, you could call them, yeah, nice to have gimmicks, you could even call it.
Yeah.
I've also made the same observation like you. So when I'm doing creative work, I needed to do it in handwriting, always. If I'm sitting in front of my desktop, it doesn't work. I'm not any creative. So I'm basically doing the creative work on paper and then transform it into the digital version.
Yeah.
Of course, I know that's super inefficient, but it doesn't work any other way.
Yeah.
Because I'm often when I'm writing something on my screen, I'm sitting there for hours and get nothing done. But if I'm doing it, if I'm taking a walk and sitting down somewhere and taking notes and writing down, it suddenly works.
Yeah. I totally agree. I like that for process flows too. I like to draw boxes first and arrows on a piece of paper, and then I'll put it in into
Exactly.
whatever I'm
I
working on.
hate doing that on a screen. That's horrible, really. Drawing something or handwriting on a screen is absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
So I'm probably the same generation as you are, quite old. But what I think is that we have already crossed the point of where technology was really that helpful, and now simply are really replacing the human parts for the sake of it with new technology.
Yeah. I mean, if it takes you longer to use a tool than it would not using the tool, then that's a bit of an issue. So just don't use the tool.
I mean, there are really cool tools, as I've mentioned
Sure.
before, Update AI or using AI to create presentations or stuff like this, or some graphics or images.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's really great. I couldn't do it better myself. Of course, it would take 100 times longer, but that's something that really makes sense.
I did find one tool that I thought was brilliant. Again, not for a finished product necessarily, but for a framework and an ideas like generator is Gamma. Do you know about Gamma?
No, I
It
don't
basically
think so.
builds PowerPoint presentations based off of your prompts, and they're
Okay.
decent. Like they're not bad. You know, so if you wanted to like have it write a QBR for you and you give it some basic data, it'll get you 80% of 80% of the way there, which is quite interesting. So anyway, that's the tool tip for the day. What is your content diet? What do you read? What do you listen to? What do you do to keep yourself fresh?
I have to admit that I am no longer reading that much than I am doing in the past. So when I started in customer success, LinkedIn has been my primary source of content.
Yeah.
So I really read everything I could find. But now I'm yeah, facing the problem that there is so much content on LinkedIn that I really dislike, and it takes so long until I really find something relevant.
Yeah.
So I find a million carousels. I find so many posts that have obviously been created by some kind of AI. It's really becomes obvious by the tone they're written in, and I have to scroll through, I don't know, 100 posts until I find something really useful. What I'm doing is I read posts from a few people I'm following. I'm really
Yeah.
following on LinkedIn. I've also signed up for a few newsletters, but I've become really picky.
There's a lot of newsletters out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another great source of information inspiration is the website from Lincoln Murphy. So he's one of the godfathers of customer success, you could say.
Yeah.
So he also has kind of a strong and different view on customer success. Most customer success focused stuff I'm doing besides writing is really thinking.
Yeah. Right. And
So I'm thinking about the things I've said in the past and things I've done in the past and reflecting on it. And then I'm really focused on evolving my own game, you could say.
yeah, yeah. And I do think there's a lot of need for that. I mean, your content specifically, I think, provokes a lot of thought, and I like the way that you structure it, and that you put things out that are obviously well thought through, and aren't just a regurgitation of what everybody else is saying. And there's some uniqueness there, and I think I think we can all take some lessons from that.
Yeah, that's something dear to me, because I think what is called customer success echo chamber is one of the reasons why so many customer success managers really have a hard time right now.
Right.
A hard time working with customers, and also a hard time of promoting or demonstrating the value they bring to the company. So there's the classic question, what is the ROI of customer success? So if you're getting asked that by your CEO or CRO or whoever asked the question, then you have a problem, because it should become obvious that you're creating value for the company.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing I'm also a bit worried about is there's also some kind of movement, you could say, towards building communities for customer success.
Right.
So to connect customers with each other. And it often, I think it's a great idea, but it often feels like it's meant that people think it's a one and done solution. So you create that community and all your problems are resolved.
Right.
So, but the community is only one part of what you're doing, because not everybody is part of the community. Not everybody that is part of the community will be active there. And then you have, I know, if you have 1,000 people in a community, you have 20 people that are writing and 980 people that are only reading.
Right, exactly.
And you never know what they're thinking.
Yeah.
So that's like what we are seeing on LinkedIn, for example. There are, I don't know, 900 million users. And I mean, there are some kind of statistics, but I think only 1% of the people are creating content.
Yeah.
I think it was something like 1% is creating content, some kind of 10% is reading it, and the rest is only using it when they're looking for a new job.
Right. Yeah. And I see a lot of people who go in spurts. They'll go a month intense, and then 6 months silence, and then a month intense.
So building a community is not your savior, even though it's a great idea, as I've mentioned before. But I really think customer success, the most important thing is to focus on the customer, and then build a community or build resources or create courses and everything that's possible, or even create a customer academy, whatever.
Yeah.
But it always needs to focus on the customer and their needs.
Well, and it's like
not be an end in itself.
You meet the customer where they are,
Yes.
And whatever that looks like. And I think, again, to mention an earlier point, you need to ask them. We all just make assumptions sometimes. It's like, oh, we'll just write these articles, we'll put them here, and that'll be great. It's like, well, they might like some video. They might like an e-learning course. They might like to talk to each other about it. They might like an SMS from you. Who knows?
People have stopped asking.
Yeah.
It's funny, because whenever I'm talking to customer success managers or leaders, I always ask them, do you know whether your customers are really successful? And most of them, they don't know. They believe they are successful because they're still here.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But that's obviously not that's kind of playing with fire, because you don't know what happens next.
Yeah, and I think you're almost afraid to find out, maybe, if you don't know.
Of course, it's kind of embarrassing if you've never talked to the customer for 6 months, and then you suddenly reach out to the customer and ask, hey, dear customer, are you actually successful?
Yeah. I think that part of customer success is not just about, yes, it's about driving outcomes and value, and making sure that the customer's set up for renewal, and making sure that you're whatever. But I think a big part of it is just being human, and like, it's okay to fall on your sword a little bit, and be a little bit transparent about the fact that, hey, look, we want to engage with you. We want to engage with you the right way. Tell us what that is. Have we not been doing it the correct way? Like, it's okay to be wrong, as long as you understand how to correct it and get that information.
Yeah, no, your customers, they will value the effort, of course. If you're taking the time to really talk to them and not send them another survey where they already get 50 different services every month in the mailbox, they will be happy to actually talk to you.
They will be. Yeah, exactly. Well, look, this has been a great conversation. I've really appreciated you coming on the podcast and spending time with me. And I want to give you an opportunity to just tell everybody what you're up to, where they can find you, reach out to you, engage with you, and all of that.
Yeah, so the easiest thing to reach out or engage with me is on LinkedIn. I'm really active there, posting stuff every day. And yeah, from there in my profile, you can find links to my newsletter, to my course, to my website, etc., etc. Everything that you could possibly find about me, except for all the podcasts I've been part of that are spread out
Yeah.
on the internet. But if you like to listen to them, I can share it with you, of course. But yeah, the best starting point is simply on LinkedIn.
Sounds good. Well, thank you again. And I can only wrap it up by saying servus.
Then all I can say is oida.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Digital Customer Success Podcast. If you like what we're doing, consider leaving us a review on your podcast platform of choice. It really helps us to grow and to provide value to a broader audience. You can view the Digital Customer Success definition word map and get more details about the show at digitalcustomersuccess.com. My name is Alex Turkovich. Thanks again for joining, and we'll see you next time.